Here mé dúirta hiarna den náil néfa curfuing, chun sinna stúrin arganíomhre, agus neart a grás a bhronóirín chun iad a thuairt chun críocha, ónas go ruúte thosófar ar nila bhríthir agus ar nila gníomh festa, agus go tríocht a críocht nófarí trí Christ ar díirna. Direct we beseech thee, O Lord, our actions by thy holy inspirations, and carry them on by thy gracious assistance, that every word and work of ours may always begin from thee, and by thee be happily ended, through Christ our Lord. Amen. Now I call on Deputy Leo Varadkar to make a statement to the House.
Ceann Comhairle, tá orm a chur anúil dit gur éirí mé as ifig mar híseach inné trí na chuir sin anúil don uachtaráin do bhun an bhunreachta. Yesterday I resigned from the office of Taoiseach by placing my resignation in the hands of the President pursuant to the Constitution. I've had the privilege to serve for the past 20 years as a public representative, 13 years in Cabinet, 7 as leader of my party as Taoiseach, Taoiseach and Taoiseach again. It has been the most fulfilling and rewarding time of my life. But today is the beginning of a new era for my party, a new chapter in my life, and a new phase for this coalition government. I want to offer some special words of thanks to my constituents in Castleknock, Blanchardstown and Dublin West, who've elected me to represent them on Fingal County Council and in Dáil Éireann on 5 separate occasions. I shall continue as their TD and look forward to being a full-time parliamentarian and constituency TD again. I want to thank my loyal, brilliant and hard-working staff, most of whom left government buildings for the last time this morning when I did. I want to thank my party for choosing me to be their leader, for their support and confidence these past 7 years. And I want to thank my ministerial colleagues, past and present. They are among the most talented, committed and capable people I've ever known, and in particular Minister Coveney, who leaves government today as well. I also want to thank the Taoiseach and Minister Ryan. This historic government ended civil war politics in our Parliament and was the first to include Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Green Party. The trust and respect that we've built up together ensured that this government remained solid and stayed the course, and I think will be a model for future coalitions of equals in this state and elsewhere. And I want to thank the civil and public service for their commitment to the state. They might not put themselves on the ballot papers in the way politicians do, but they do put public service first, and that ought to be recognised more. Ceann Comhairle, before I leave the seat, I want to offer some short reflections. The first is that Ireland is a great country. We've been a stable and continuous democracy for over 100 years, one of only a handful in the world. We have our problems, but we are free and prosperous and safe, with huge opportunities for our citizens that would have been unimaginable in the past. In almost every ranking, we're placed in the top 10 or 20 countries in the world of 200. We're not a failed state. We are a great state. We should love it, protect it, and build on all that's been achieved since independence to make it better still. The second is that most, if not all, of the problems that we've faced in the past 15 years have been international or external in origin, or have had an international dimension to them. The banking and financial crash, Brexit, the pandemic, inflation, the energy crisis, climate change, and migration. These are all problems with an external origin. Even challenges like health and housing that are more domestic in nature have a strong international element too. Health services are under pressure all over the world due to rising and ageing populations, the development of new and often expensive treatments, and a global skills shortage. Ireland is not an outlier on health, and when it comes to housing, much of the problems we face are linked to changes in the way that housing construction and purchase have been financed. As well as rising populations and incomes, there was a prolonged period of low interest rates and internationalisation of how new home building and mortgages are funded, which has meant profound changes in rental and housing markets globally. Ireland is an island, but it's not a separate planet. And it's a fallacy to believe that most of our problems are homegrown or due to any particular political party or ideology. They're mostly global megatrends. We're a small ship on a big and restless ocean, and we need that ship to be crewed by good people. The only workable and sustainable solutions involve multilateralism, tackling these challenges with other countries through international bodies like the European Union, the UN system, the OECD, and through international agreements. And we must not lose sight of this. The third is to guard against excessive caution. The majority of officials, advisory bodies, and academics will recommend caution, playing it safe, conservative with a small c. It's not always the best advice. Certainly, had we known that the economy would recover so quickly after the crash, that it would not stagnate as a consequence of Brexit, that it would bounce back so strongly after COVID, many of the investment decisions we've made would have been made 2 or 3 years sooner, and policies that are now starting to show results would have done so much earlier had we been a little more confident. The fourth is health. Health is not a black hole, and health can be fixed. It's just expensive, takes time, and is never easy due to resistance to reform. Just don't give up. As the International Medical Journal, The Lancet, acknowledged a few weeks ago, Ireland in the past 7 years has become, and I quote, a more equitable place, not least in terms of health. People live longer and healthier lives than ever before. Most people no longer have to pay to see their GP or stay the night in a public hospital. Survival rates for stroke, heart attack, and many cancers have dramatically improved in the past 10 years. Waiting lists have fallen for 2 years in a row and will again this year. Private practice is being disentangled and phased out of our public hospitals, and the budget for new buildings, IT, and equipment has trebled. We now, per capita, have levels of spending and investment that are comparable with our peers. More nurses per head than almost any country in the developed world, more doctors per head than most developed countries, including Britain and Australia, albeit not always doing the right work in the right places with the right support. My point is that universal health care is achievable, but it will need ongoing leadership, political prioritisation and investment. The fifth is national security. For the first time in decades, we have a full-scale war in Europe, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Sweden has abandoned 200 years of neutrality. Finland has joined NATO. Some European countries are debating the reintroduction of national service, others raising taxes, cutting spending and reducing public holidays to pay for increased defence expenditure. European leaders I speak to see very dark clouds on the near horizon. They may be wrong. I hope they're wrong. But we cannot assume they are, or ignore the growing risks of a world in which democracy is in retreat and autocrats become ever more powerful. Our geography and our neutrality does not protect us in the way it did in the past, and the nature of security threats has changed utterly. We have to be prepared for the consequences of an attack on an EU country and how we would respond to that. The final is about politicians. There has been much debate about the change in tone in political debate, the growth and encouragement of anger, a new coarseness and even toxicity. It's true that these are reflections of changes in our society and are not unique to politicians. They're also amplified by algorithms and social media. But it's also something that we are, at least in part, responsible for ourselves. We should not twist each other's words, misquote each other, misrepresent each other, or demonise each other. And we should be much slower to question each other's motives. Above all, we need to learn to disagree better. I've worked with members in government, with 4 different parties and independents, and I've seen people move from the opposition benches to the government ones and back again. In my constituency and on many campaigns, I've worked with people from political traditions and perspectives that are opposite of mine. With very few exceptions, they are all people who are motivated by a desire to improve their country and communities, which they care about deeply. If we want politicians to be more respected, we have to respect each other a little bit better. Ceann Comhairle, working with colleagues, I've had the honour of helping to lead Ireland from unemployment to full employment, from budget deficits to budget surplus, to a point where we have the resources to invest in public services and public goods in a way we could not in the past. Through a pandemic in which we saved lives and livelihoods, through Brexit where we prevented a hard border between North and South and protected our place in Europe, we've made the country more equal and more modern when it comes to the rights of children, the LGBT community and women, and more recently we've led the country through inflation and a cost of living crisis, the worst of which is now thankfully behind us. We've made work pay better, with higher pay and lower personal taxes, the introduction of a living wage and statutory sick pay, pay-related benefits and better family leave. And I was very pleased that at my last Cabinet meeting, we approved legislation to introduce auto-enrolment, ensuring that all workers will have an occupational pension to top up their state pension when they retire. This is a transformative reform that will make a real difference in the lives of millions of people for decades to come and make our country richer and more financially secure. I'm also pleased that during my time as Taoiseach, we've doubled spending on the arts, culture and sport. This is making a real difference now and will continue to do so into the future. We've increased our spending on international development, expanded our diplomatic footprint around the world, building on Ireland's already strong soft power, and the National Broadband Plan is underway, bringing fibre-based internet connections to every home, school, farm and community in Ireland. I'm also proud that we, as Irish people, have welcomed over 100,000 refugees from Ukraine to our shores when they needed our protection, notwithstanding the enormous challenges that it brought. We've reduced consistent poverty and income inequality, and housing construction has more than doubled since 2017, with 500 people becoming homeowners every week now, the highest number in almost 2 decades. More people are attending higher and further education than ever before, and from more diverse backgrounds than ever before. Greenhouse gases emissions are now falling, renewable energy is booming, and Ireland is no longer a laggard on climate change. We are turning the tide on climate and biodiversity loss. With the North-South Ministerial Council having met yesterday, the Good Friday Agreement institutions are working again, and the trading relationship with the United Kingdom in the post-Brexit era is settled and stable. Of course, there are many areas in which we've been much less successful as a government, and some in which we've gone backwards, and these are problems still to be solved. There will always be problems to be solved, and always more work to be done. This work will now be led by others. Finally, I want to take this opportunity to wish Minister Harris every success in his new role as Taoiseach. I always knew he would be Taoiseach one day. This is perhaps coming a little bit sooner than he might have planned or expected, but I know he will rise to the occasion. He has empathy, energy, experience, campaigning skills and political antennae to take us forward, and I look forward to voting for him and the new Cabinet in the House later today. Gur míle agaibh.
Can I just, as Count Corla, say to you, Deputy Varadkar, that I and the Chair are deeply grateful to you for your constant cooperation, for your total professionalism as a parliamentarian over the years you've held the office of Taoiseach, and for the very sound advice that you gave on those occasions when it was required. And can I wish you, on behalf of everyone here, all the very, very best in the future that lies ahead for you. I'm sure it's going to be long, successful and happy. I now call on the Government Chief Whip, Minister Hildegard Naughton, to outline the proposed business for the week.
Thank you, Count Corla. It is proposed that the proceedings on the nominations for Taoiseach shall, if not previously concluded, be brought to a conclusion after 1 hour and 42 minutes, and the following arrangements shall apply. The debate shall be confined to a single round, and the arrangements shall be as follows. The speeches of a government proposer and seconder shall not exceed 5 minutes. The speeches by representatives of other government parties, Sinn Féin, the Labour Party, Social Democrats, People Before Profit Solidarity, the Regional Group, the Rural Independent independent group, and the independent group shall not exceed 10 minutes per party or group. Contributions by non-aligned members shall not exceed 2 minutes, and members may share time. On the nomination of a Taoiseach for appointment by the President, the Dáil shall, unless it otherwise orders, stand suspended until either 5 p.m. or 4 hours after the conclusion of the proceedings, whichever is the later. And other than on this usual business, this business proposal, any divisions claimed this week shall be taken by roll call.
Thank you, Chief Whip. Is the proposed business for the week agreed? Deputy Pádraig McLaughlin and then Deputy Boyd Barrett. Yes.
Ceann Comhairle, it's very clear that when Taoiseach Leo Varadkar went out to the park last night, we should have been going to the country today. The people should decide on who our next Taoiseach is, not the assembled numbers here in government. The people should have their say. This should not be happening today. We should have gone to the country. So we do not agree to your schedule.
Now, come here. Listen, the whole country is looking in. Can we please behave with a bit of decorum? Deputy Boyd Barrett.
The business facing the country and the issues facing the country have been effectively driven off the agenda for the rest of the week, and that to me is unacceptable. That there's going to be no, on the first day of the new Taoiseach's ascension into office, there'll be no leaders' questions, there'll be no Taoiseach's questions. A debate on disability has been bumped off the agenda. Questions on finance have been bumped off the agenda. That is not the way to start a new government. It's just not acceptable. And I think just because we're having this jamboree today is not a reason to take business off the agenda, which is of extreme importance to ordinary people in this country.
Deputy, it's not appropriate to describe the election of a Taoiseach as a jamboree. Let's have regard and respect for our constitution and for the role that we play here. This is not, I assure you, a jamboree. Deputy McGrath.
Thank you. This is not, it's definitely not a jamboree, but I don't know what it is. Other words in the dictionary to describe it. It's the third time we've changed Taoiseachs in this present government. And the people want an election. The people want a new government, not a new Taoiseach. So it is a complete coronation and a complete adulation from Fine Gael, as we've seen there with standing ovations, and we're going to see many more of them. And the hiring of more spin doctors all week by Minister Harris tells us what this government is going to be. Spin, not substance. To continue neglecting the business. To think that I wrote to you, Ceann Comhairle, asking you to have a business committee, when I saw the agenda for this week, the way it was dissected, and everything was cast aside just to suit Fine Gael agenda. Of course, aided and abetted by Fianna Fáil leader Micheál Martin, the Deputy Martin, and indeed Deputy Eamon Ryan, Minister Ryan, and Minister Martin Taoiseach. So what else can we say about it?
Right.
What else can we say about it?
That's fine. Please.
Listen, I'm not saying, I'm talking about the business, the order of business we're talking about. Yes. I'm totally unhappy, and we in the Rural Independents objected to this and asked for a meeting. This is a new historic change for the business committee that's operating for the last 9.5 years successfully, and it's just totally admonished this week. Disability is out, leaders' questions are out, topical issues are out, and the many issues, including the weather affecting our country and our people today, and especially our agriculture and food production.
All right, thank you.
It's a charade.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. No one else offering. Question is being put then, is the business as proposed for the week agreed to? The Chocty at Tarhevna Tarishkan Abadish Taw, and a gun and Neil, Stolen Gun and Catch Richard, the questions carried. Vote all. Business proposal for the order of business from the Chief Whip. The question is that the proposed arrangements for the week be agreed to, and on that proposal a division has been challenged. Deputies Taw, Minister Hildegard Naughton and Deputy Cormac Devlin, Neil, Deputy Pádraig McLaughlin and Deputy Matty McGrath. Se tar an vótáil sin ná tá 8-7, Níl 53, níor stéin aine, so tá an ceistríte agus tá gnóid na seachtainna sucrathe. I now call on Minister Heather Humphreys to make a proposal in respect of the office of Taoiseach. Minister Humphreys.
The first time I came to the Dáil was on the 9th of March 2011. And I suppose, like any first-time TD, I was nervous, I was finding my feet, and I was trying to get used to this place and all the new faces around me. I saw this young lad walking around the place, and I said to myself, sure, he must be on a school tour or on work experience. So you can imagine my surprise a few moments later when I saw him standing up to nominate Enda Kenny as Taoiseach. It took me a few weeks to make my maiden speech. He did it on day one, and I think anybody who heard him that day knew from the start he'd go far. Can Corla, I've got to know Simon Harris very well over the last 13 years, and it's a great honour for me today to propose him to be our next Taoiseach. Contrary to popular belief, Simon didn't always want to be a politician. When he was younger, he actually wanted to be a vet. But of course, life, as we all know, takes us in different directions. Only yesterday evening, I was at a meeting in Monaghan along with Minister Rabbitte, Deputies Niamh and Brendan Smith and Senator Robbie Gallagher, where we heard stories of difficulties being faced by the parents of children with autism. So it's certainly not lost on me that I'm standing here today nominating somebody to be Taoiseach who, because of their own life experience, was first inspired to get involved in politics to help people with autism and their families. And it's that sense of simply wanting to help, of breaking down barriers and making life better for people that drives Simon Harris. I know under his leadership we're going to see a major focus on improving supports for people with disabilities, and that is something I very much welcome. I have served alongside Simon in 3 different cabinets, and I have witnessed firsthand the qualities and the strengths that I know he will bring to the office of an Taoiseach. He is somebody who listens and works with people, and he's always willing to take on new ideas. He has endless amounts of energy. He is someone who cares deeply about improving services for families, for delivering opportunities for our young people, and creating the kind of society that we all want to live in. In our country's darkest hours during the pandemic, Simon Harris displayed real leadership. He made the difficult decisions, and those decisions saved lives. In his role as Minister for Further and Higher Education, Simon has shown that regardless of your background or where you come from, everyone deserves an equal opportunity in life. And unlike those who will shout loudest today, Simon Harris was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth. I know today is a proud day for your family, Simon, and I want to acknowledge in particular your wife, Kiefa, your 2 beautiful children, Saoirse and Cillian, and of course your parents, Mary and Bert. From my experience, taxi drivers normally have their fingers on the pulse. So, if I was to give you one piece of advice today, Simon, make sure you listen to your father. Can Corla, before I conclude, I want to acknowledge the contribution that Leo Varadkar has made to Ireland. Leo was the Taoiseach this country needed when the pandemic hit us. The work he, along with Simon Coveney, put in day and night during the Brexit negotiations to ensure that there would be no return to a hard border on our island will never be forgotten. He is handing over a country at full employment and with a budget surplus. Of course, challenges remain and work goes on. Simon Harris is the right person to help Ireland face those challenges, and I am very proud to nominate him for the position of Taoiseach. Gura maith agat.
Minister Peter Burke, I understand you're going to second the proposal.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. I wish to second the name of Simon Harris to lead the 34th Government of Ireland. Every member of this House is elected by their communities for a 5-year mandate. It was this great Assembly and its duty, its constitutional duty, to elect a Taoiseach. And I think on the 15th of December 1994, the late John Bruton put it best, before he was nominated to Taoiseach, describing the office as a high office and a humbling one. He also stated that it derives all its authority from this Dáil, the duly elected Assembly of the people. Fellow colleagues, this statement is most pertinent. We never should take a constitutional democracy for granted, nor should any politician in this House ever distort it. Ceann Comhairle, Simon Harris first entered politics through advocacy to support his brother Adam and their family get vital services that they needed to improve their life. In 2009, he was elected to Wicklow County Council with over 32% of the vote at the age of 22, a record at that time. And at the age of 24 in 2011, he was elected to this House, Dáil Éireann. Simon quickly displayed the attributes that is needed to be a minister: the ability to listen, compassion, an agile mind, and the ability to speak without hesitation, a firm belief in his abilities. We saw at a time when our country, from that period since 2016, met its most major challenges. In the space of 6 years, a global pandemic, Brexit, the first war in mainland Europe in a generation, a sharp cost of living crisis. Each one of those events is a once-in-a-generational type event, yet they all came to our shores in the space of 6 years. And Simon Harris was part of that team, along with our outgoing Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, who managed that process, who managed Ireland at a very difficult time. At a time during COVID, during the pandemic, he provided a calm voice that transcended generations, that gave people hope at her darkest hour in Ireland. In the Department of Further and Higher Education, Simon Harris broke down the barriers to education brick by brick. He worked closely to ensure that we have more technical universities in this country, bringing forward the Higher Education Bill. He worked to ensure families are better supported to reach and attain education. He worked to ensure that apprenticeships now have parity of esteem through the CAO process, recognising that a growing and strong economy needs the skills to underwrite it. Fellow colleagues, Simon Harris knows that education is the most powerful catalyst to accelerate change. He has displayed that in his portfolio very clearly. I saw Simon work on the ground in my constituency on his many visits, working but critically listening to people, never judging someone, listening to them and working to make their lives better. Like Simon, as a husband and a dad of 2 young children, I know that life's greatest blessing is the love you get from your family. And today it is a huge honour to have Simon's wife, Caoimhe, to have his children, Cillian and Saoirse. We can hear young Cillian's sweet voice just over my shoulder from time to time, and his parents, Mary and Bart. They know what Simon Harris is capable of. We in Fine Gael know what Simon Harris is capable of. Now it's time to get on with the work, to lead the 34th Government, to lead it with energy, a renewed energy, with compassion, bringing it right back to the core of politics. Thank you, Ceann Comhairle.
Thank you, Deputy Burke. Now, on behalf of Fianna Fáil, Deputy Micheál Martin, please.
Leo Varadkar rin sár obair son de tíre mar híiseach. Ceanara a bhí sásta cóibrú leis na páirtithe eile sa rialtas seo agus dairg ling dul chun cín mór a dhéanamh le blianta beaga inuas. Dibrig lia go dtíon go líoch gabhniscéil go dtíon díhalach dánach stálach son muintir na tíre seo. Agus hiag sin a dúil go sí a bhíar agus an tácht a bhí leis na dúlgaisí sin a cholíne. Tá measagam lia agus cuim gach rá agus sonas ort sna blianta atá roing. I think, Ceann Comhairle, and while I know we haven't formally set time aside, but within the context of this speech, it's been a long-established tradition in this House to mark the resignation of a Taoiseach with some very short personal comments. In these days of ever-rising disputes in politics, I believe it's a tradition worth preserving. Deputy Varadkar has been a member of government for the past 13 years and has been a member of this House for 17 years. He has served his community, his party and his country in the highest offices in our democratic republic. This service has been through often quite difficult times, which required the government and the Oireachtas to respond to rapidly changing events. During the past 4 years, we have served in government together, including the tense and often isolated times during the pandemic. I very much appreciate the spirit of open and honest discussion in which we were able to operate, especially with Deputy Ryan, as we worked together to address these urgent challenges. May I also say, Leo, that I enjoyed your reflections as you spoke earlier this morning, which could be the beginning, perhaps, of a book or a publication in terms of your time in office, and I won't say I'll await that with trepidation or whatever. I want to thank you, Deputy Varadkar, for your service, and I want to wish you, partner Matt, and your wider family well, and I have no doubt that you will continue to be an active voice in our public affairs. At the beginning of this Dáil at Ceann Comhairle, my party participated in lengthy discussions on the formation of a three-party coalition government. And following the conclusion of these discussions, we held the largest vote ever completed by an Irish political party. This ratified both the programme for government and our agreement to seeking a new way for government to operate. From the first moment, each party gave its commitment to respecting agreements and to implementing our programme across the full term of this Dáil. We were determined that time would not be wasted on the old political game of speculation about election dates, and instead to focus on the substance of implementing our programme of action. No party or deputy in this House has a mandate to claim to represent the views of all Irish people or to demand exclusive control of public policies for themselves. There are those in this House who scorn at the idea of centrist politics. To them, the purity of ideology is comforting, and they show this by never having any doubt about in their own views and the certainty of their own views, or in the fact that they alone represent the Irish people, whether or not the Irish people agree with that proposition. However, a distinguishing feature of centrist democracy is the ability to respect differences, find points of agreement, and to cooperate. And this is what we have done. This government was formed in the middle of the greatest public health crisis in modern times, and with over 500,000 people out of work. It overcame tremendous pressure during its first 2 years, and by any objective standard, saved lives and livelihoods in every community in this country. We have worked together on a programme of investment in a wide range of public services to assist people during a worldwide inflation crisis and to respond to what is by any measure a moment of great threat to the future of democracy in Europe. We are three separate parties, but seek to work together, respecting both our differences and an agreed approach to the most urgent issues facing our country. Following his election as leader of Fine Gael, I, along with Deputy Eamon Ryan, held a lengthy discussion with Deputy Harris concerning the operation of government and our shared commitments to our agreed programme. And I'm happy to say that this was a very constructive and positive discussion. Deputy Harris confirmed his commitment to implementing our agreements and to the operation of this multi-party government in a manner which respects each of its components and operates in a consensual and constructive manner. Fianna Fáil will be supporting the proposal to nominate Deputy Simon Harris as leader of his party to the President for appointment to the office of Taoiseach. It is an unfortunate reality that much of the opposition has committed itself to a type of politics which is obsessed with fake outrage and attacking everything. The display we have seen in recent weeks about the election of a new Taoiseach has become more strained and absurd every day. Repeatedly, we have heard the claim that this is somehow undemocratic and that there should be an election every time a new Taoiseach has to be elected. Now, I know that there are many opposite who have only very recently become reconciled to recognising and respecting Bunreacht na hÉireann. But our Constitution could not be clearer. Each member of this Dáil carries a mandate for a full term, and the choice of all office holders can change throughout this mandate. I must confess that I've been amazed by the brazenness of the largest opposition party on this matter. I will be seeking support at the Sinn Féin convention. Has long been one of the emptiest and meaningless phrases ever uttered. Of relevance today is that, while it is attacking the democratic legitimacy of this vote, it has a unique record of privately appointing and replacing leaders without ever holding an internal election, let alone a public one. In fact, today, no opposition party, large or small, has a leader who went through a competitive election before assuming the role. We will have more time at Ceann Comhairle during the debate on the nomination of ministers to discuss substantive policy matters and the range of work which will be our focus during the rest of this Dáil's mandate. And we have a significant piece of work to do over the next 12 months, and we are determined to do it. At this critical moment, where we face often dramatic challenges at home and internationally, instead of questioning the democratic legitimacy of this vote, we should be grateful for the fact that we have a robust democracy and a strong and resilient parliamentary democracy, which we should do everything to uphold and to support and not to undermine. On a personal level, I would like to congratulate Deputy Harris, his wife Caoimhe, his family and his supporters, and particularly Saoirse and Cillian. For them, it will be a day that they'll remember differently as time evolves, but it's a very special moment for them and for Mary and Bart as well. And because all of us here, we all know that nobody can succeed in making a real impact in our public life by ourselves. And just like the tough times are shared, I think so too are moments such as these. And I wish our family the greatest of enjoyment of this moment and of this day, because I've no doubt in the immediate aftermath things might get a bit more challenging and rockier. I wish you well. It's a special day for you, and I look forward to a constructive and to effective cooperation in the time ahead. Go míle maith agus go nairóig an tálaat. Go míle go.
Mission Chapter Eamon Reinerson and Coentus Glass.
Orla, I would just start first of all by thanking Leo Varadkar for the work he has done, particularly in the last 4 years, but over the time in this Dáil. He leaves a record as leader of Taoiseach of the country when our economy has never been stronger. And I think history will judge that the way, Leo, your timing in how you managed Brexit with the British government, knowing when there was the time for a deal and what that deal would be, will stand the real recognition. And similarly, that critical moment early in 2020, when fear about COVID was so strong in the land, your words to reassure people at that time showed real leadership, and that record will travel with you. whatever you do next. I'm absolutely convinced, as the Taoiseach says, you continue to have a role in public life. What you said this morning, I just heard, which was true, about leading a coalition of equals is very important. Because that ability to know it's not just about the numbers, it is about the ideas. It's about being open to persuasion. It's about being able to compromise and work collectively is hugely important. There's another person I've seen over the 20 years more I've been here is Simon Coveney. We started together, well, you were there before me, but on the Joint Trucks Committee on climate, energy, thinking about technology, how we improve the lives of our people by thinking long term. And similarly, I remember that very difficult period during the financial crash when really it couldn't have got harder. I remember keeping in touch with Simon where there was connection between opposition and government. It was the public interest you were thinking of, not just your party's interests. And I remember, Brendan Howland will recall this, Mary Lou, you will too. During that Brexit period, how often did we go into Ivy House? Almost monthly, where Simon wanted an absolute open, transparent basis, not just us, but also trade unions, NGOs, academics, business community. He was an open book in operating a partnership model of government. We do social partnership in this country to share what was happening, to listen to what the best thinking might be. That partnership approach is the one that works, the one that delivers for our country. And this government is committed to it for the remaining 10 months that we have been given the mandate under the Constitution to do. And I hear others saying, oh no, we have to have an election now. I fundamentally disagree, because there's work to be done that we can deliver. Darragh O'Brien has turned things around in housing where the numbers there do not lie. There has been a dramatic increase, and that can continue and will continue. Similarly, I would argue, Stephen Donnelly, any honest assessment of the outcomes for delivery to improving the health qualities of our people would show again a record of improvement that we need to continue laser focus, because that's what's important for our people. And similarly, as the Taoiseach says, we are starting to turn and show real leadership in climate as a people. We are good at this. We're starting to see the emissions last year in power generation. What did they fall? Was it 17%? And we're only warming up. And there's immediate tasks warming up the Irish people in delivering a solar revolution, delivering retrofitting, delivering public transport. You can laugh at that, but that actually improves and transforms the quality of people's lives, which is what our job is to deliver. We have got immediate projects. Rather than having an election, I believe we should spend our time delivering a future broadcasting funding mechanism, so that one of the biggest challenges of our time, which is the misinformation and disinformation that is widespread across the land and across the world, we have to deliver that before the summer recess, as we have all agreed. We have to deliver what Roderick O'Gorman has set in train, a way of actually managing the international protection and the people coming into our country in a way that works for all our people. And there's immediate work to be done on that. That cannot delay, wait for an election, and then whatever period of time that takes. I'd prefer for us to deliver that now. I'd prefer to deliver, go to government, as I intend in coming weeks, on a strategy and an approach towards a just transition towards a sustainable future, which really picks up on that partnership model. And that legislation I would prefer to bring to the House rather than going to an immediate election. And we have work to do, each party here. Show me a party which is prepared for an election, which has a manifesto already written, which has the answer to the key questions of our time in terms of how do we go now to 90% emission reductions by 2040? How do we deliver the further advances in housing and health? We should spend time thinking about that. But first, we have 2 elections that we do need to give due attention and due respect, rather than calling for another immediate general election. We have a Europe. Well, that's a question, Michael. That would be up to the people. And the people have a choice there. The people in that European election, and this is a big, historical, important European election, where in one hand you have people putting themselves forward. Europe is full. Climate action can wait. I wouldn't touch those vaccines. We don't need to restore nature. Well, I don't agree with that vision of the future, and I think it's important that that decision of the Irish people and people across Europe is the focus of our attention in the next 10 weeks. Just as importantly, probably even more importantly, is us giving attention to the local elections. In our constitution, we all talk about Bunnock the Hare in our constitution system. The cornerstone of our democracy is in every constituency, every council, every the meetings of the councillors. Those incredible difficult decisions, we all know, anyone here who's been a councillor, know it's one of the hardest places to be. Because sometimes you have to take a hard vote and the public gallery is behind you. And you have to raise your hand, you know, something that you believe is right, but what not everyone wants to see. And I think our constitutional imperative should be on focusing on those local and European elections now. It'll be strange, out of respect for our constitution, I would refer to the Taoiseach and Taoiseach by those titles. I'm going to have to turn to Leo and the Taoiseach now, Simon beside. Where's Simon gone? I think he's very well placed. Can I say, just as a background, as a teenager, he established that AAA autism group in Wicklow. Now, that, believe it or not, is not that unusual. Right across the country, there are civic actions like that where people are actually coordinating and organising to improve the quality of lives of their people. In autism alone, snowflakes up in swords. Snowflake because every individual is special and different, but occasionally can suffer a meltdown. Organises activities for children, families with autism. Open Spectrum in South Dublin does the exact same. The Rainbow Clubs in Cork. It's all over the country. We have this tradition of civic engagement. And part of that is recognising that the state does not do enough. And that's where the instinct comes from to go into politics, which all of us have in different forms. And all this assembly is, all this House is that ordinary Irish people who have been given the mandate to try and decide how do we allocate resources. That's what we're deciding here today, to elect a Taoiseach to represent all of us, and through us, all the people. I believe the strength Simon showed in that COVID, like the Taoiseach in that COVID period, would stand to him in the hard decisions you have to make in government, which is the real test, when you can do the hard thing. I also think in this last 4 years, working within our cabinet, that he has that sense that this future has to be green, because we've turned around the apprenticeship scheme, recognising the future for young people in this country is through this green just transition. That's the greatest opportunity for us. And it starts from our young people. And it's coming from our young people. And I think what he learned in that time in Cabinet, in that role, sets me confidence that we can continue on that path. And it is Cabinet, not just Taoiseach and Taoiseach, because actually working in a Cabinet is what's important, working in that collective responsibility way. There will be new people coming to the Cabinet, Lord only knows who yet, but actually I'm confident we can retain what both Taoiseach and Taoiseach has said is collective Cabinet responsibility and partnership that can and will, for the remaining 10 months of this government, deliver for the people. Thank you.
Rev Bogarai, we're docky up the Moshe the Hella. Please, if I could have your cooperation and respect for each speaker. Ag Bogarai and Ishkaji Sinn Féin, it's up to Mary Lou MacDonald.
This is indeed a great country. And this great country of ours faces real challenges and incredible opportunity. And the decisions that we take now directly affect our people today and for the future. And I believe passionately that our prospects can be so very bright. When all is said and done, politics in the end is about choices, and good politics is about making the right choices. Today, for the third time in 4 years, you present your choice for Taoiseach. For the third time, you rearrange the Cabinet deck chairs. For the third time in 4 years, you pat each other on the back and tell the people what a great job you're doing. The narrative we hear today from government is a fairy tale so outrageous that Hans Christian Andersen himself would be proud of it. Yeah. For people to believe the spin from the government benches, they would have to suspend all connection with reality and lose any memory of people's lived experiences. Because on the things that really matter to workers and families, you have comprehensively failed, and no amount of bragging or bluster will disguise that fact. A housing crisis, a health service that's crumbling, a cost of living crisis that pushes households to the brink. That's the reality. So you will forgive us, gentlemen, when people don't buy the fiction that you're spinning today. Don't buy a story that dresses up failure as progress. Micheál Martin, you recall, said this government would be the government to fix housing, but it got worse. Then Leo Varadkar came along. He said he'd sort out housing, and it got worse again. And now we hear Simon Harris say he will fix housing once and for all. And frankly, the people brace themselves. So here we go again. And you pass the parcel with the keys to the Taoiseach's office one more time. But let's be very clear about what's happening today. This isn't about what's good for Ireland. This isn't about what's good for the people. It's about what's good for you. It's your century-old cosy club circling the wagons once again to cling to power at all costs. I believe the people of Ireland deserve so much better, because this is a country full of talent, ideas and, yes, optimism. The people of Ireland have achieved incredible things, often against the odds. And the Irish people deserve an Ireland where opportunity and prosperity are open to everyone. An Ireland where everybody gets a fair go and nobody is left behind. And they deserve a government that matches this ambition. Now, you say that you want Simon Harris to be Taoiseach. If you really believe that, if you believe that your government has the support of the people, then you should go before the people and get that mandate. Because the reality is that the people must decide who leads, and you should call a general election. That's the reality of it. Third time round, and with the benefit of hard experience, we can state very clearly what another Fine Gael Taoiseach and the continuation of this government will mean. It means the housing emergency and the scandal of homelessness will continue. The crisis in our hospitals, trolley counts, waiting lists will continue. Households under huge pressure just to get by. It means more of the same. That is what Deputy Harris offers and represents, more of the same. He sat at Cabinet for 8 years, presiding over the very policies that have seen a collapse in home ownership, skyrocketing rents, and our health service brought to its knees. Much has been said so far from the government benches about Deputy Harris, but it's interesting to note what hasn't been said and what has been conveniently forgotten. You see, not so long ago, Simon Harris was the Minister for Health. And on his watch, hospital overcrowding spun out of control, the trolley crisis escalated, and treatment waiting lists hit 1 million patients for the very first time. On his watch, the scandalous costs of the National Children's Hospital grew and grew again. And today, the most expensive hospital in the world has yet to open its doors and has yet to treat a single child. But perhaps those who remember Deputy Harris's term as Health Minister best are the families of children with scoliosis, who were promised that they would not wait longer than 4 months for life-changing surgery, a promise that was disgracefully broken again and again. Fianna Fáil refused to vote confidence in Simon Harris as Minister for Health in 2020. It caused an election, if you all recall. Today, they dutifully line up to vote him in as Taoiseach, joined at the hip by a group of independent TDs. Now, out there in the real world, the experience is that you fail. If you fail and fail again, you get your P45. However, in the world of this government, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and the Greens, it seems you can fail your way right to the very, very top. Since Simon Harris became Fine Gael leader, he's been telling people, we've got your back. This is said without a hint of irony, and it seems with no idea of just how hollow it rings. For adults, young adults forced to live in the box room of their parents' house into their 30s. For the mother and father at their wits' end battling for services for their child, for disability services, for mental health care. For the elderly man or woman who's worked hard all their life only to suffer the indignity of lying on a hospital trolley for days. For the stressed out couple watching every euro and deciding which bill to leave unpaid this month. Fine Gael have now been in power for 13 years, and for 13 years you have shown us time and again whose backs you've got. Fine Gael has the backs of the vulture funds. Fine Gael has the backs of the rack-renting corporate landlords. Fine Gael has the backs of the financial speculators and those at the top. That is the Fine Gael way. And today you propose more of the same. Today is proof positive that we need change like never before. We need a new direction. We need a new government that will put workers, families and community first. A new government with the determination to roll up its sleeves and get the work done to improve the lives of ordinary people. That's why we need a general election. Because a better future is possible. A future where you can have a secure, affordable home, where you can see a doctor quickly when you're sick and access proper hospital care if you need it. A future where life is affordable, where your job provides a decent living and where you can retire at 65 with your pension. A future where our young people get the chance they deserve at home, where they're not forced to emigrate for opportunity, where they can build a good and prosperous life here with their family and friends. That's what change looks like. That's the change that people want. That's the change we need. Our future can be defined by equality, prosperity, opportunity, by building a strong, modern, vibrant all-Ireland economy, by achieving energy independence and security, by the reunification of our country. None of this is beyond us. All of this is possible. All of this can be achieved, but it will not be achieved with Simon Harris as Taoiseach, and it will not be achieved by this directionless government staggering on for another year with no objective other than to stay in power. Tá Simon Harris mar an géine leis an méid a chuaigh rive. An rud déirnach atá tastal ag daoine ná Taoiseach eile ó Fine Gael. Tá géir gá le old tábháin inis. Tá rialtas nua a tastal uan. Tá athrú a tastal uan. Another Fine Gael Taoiseach is the last thing that people need. We need a change of leadership. We need a change of government, and the people must have their say. They should decide who forms the next government. So the trip that will be made this afternoon to the Áras shouldn't be to seek appointment as Taoiseach. It should be to ask President Higgins to dissolve this Dáil and call a general election.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Bogarai, Porty and Look Ibra, a Hyakvi Vanabachik.
Gurmahagut Las Count Corla. Debate on the nomination of a third Taoiseach in one Dáil term is unprecedented in Irish politics. And I want to start by repeating my personal good wishes to the outgoing Taoiseach Leo Varadkar on the next chapter of his life. I do acknowledge former Taoiseach Varadkar has undoubtedly led the country through challenging times, through Brexit and COVID in particular. And I do also acknowledge, as you said earlier, the need for courtesy and for respect in politics. And indeed, in that vein, I also extend my personal good wishes to the presumptive incoming Taoiseach, Deputy Simon Harris. As Minister Harris, I think it's important that we're respectful in politics. And as Minister Harris has acknowledged, however, he has not much time to change the course of this government. I hope he has the courage to try to make that change. But unfortunately, from what we have heard so far, his elevation today will not deliver the change that we need. And that's why we in the Labour Party cannot support the Fine Gael nomination for Taoiseach. The appointment of another temporary Taoiseach by this coalition is just more superficial change, cosmetic change, not the radical change that people so badly need. That's why we have called for a general election now, not just a change of Taoiseach. Last count Corla, Ireland is a country with impressive GDP. We have full employment and the public purse sees the benefit of that, reaping plentiful tax takes. Coming back from the darkness of global recession, those conditions have created a unique political opportunity, and the pandemic response has shown us what the state can achieve, what can be done through public investment. But this potential has unfortunately not been followed through by this current government or indeed the previous government. And instead, after 8 years of rule by Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, with or without the Greens, the housing crisis is worse than ever. February's homelessness figures broke new and shameful records, particularly for children in homelessness. Emergency department chaos leaves sick people delaying hospital visits, and workers' rights are still trailing comparable European countries. We continue to miss our climate targets, buying credits from other countries when we should be investing more in clean infrastructure, and so many basic public services remain out of reach: childcare and creche places, home help hours, autism assessments, community policing. Our country has come far, and there's much about which we can and should be proud. But profound inequality remains, and Ireland is not working for far too many people. Our communities are held back by government parties which do not believe in harnessing the power of the state. And that is most true of the Fine Gael party. So a new nameplate on the door of the Taoiseach's office won't change that, because reliance on the private sector alone certainly won't change that. We heard Deputy Harris's address to his party's Ardèche on Saturday. And with just 50 weeks until a general election must be held, that speech presented an opportunity to set out a new programme for his party and indeed for the government. It was a long speech, and in less than 1 year, Minister Harris did indeed promise to do more than his party has achieved in those 8 wasted years of prosperity I referenced earlier. But his speech did not allay our concerns in Labour. There was a lot in it and over the weekend about a new energy, which sounds indeed like a Star Wars tagline. But where is that new energy in reality to deliver on housing, on healthcare, on childcare, on climate action and workers' rights, on disability rights, and all those areas which are crying out for change, where people are crying out for change? Where is the drive, the ambition and the courage to deliver the change that people really need, to deliver an Ireland that truly works? Let's take housing. Deputy Harris conceded that his government's targets are too low. And indeed, he called for 250,000 new builds in the next 5 years. I welcome that. We in Labour have been saying this for more than a year. And I wonder how Minister Harris's colleagues in government have felt about that call, given how quick many of them were to mock our call for 50,000 new builds per annum that we made last year. I don't want to say we told you so, but we do need, Minister, to see actual delivery of homes. It's not good enough to say that you're warming up, Minister Ryan, after so many years in government. And absent from that announcement was any real commitment to increase the state resourcing to ensure delivery of the supply of public housing, of social and affordable housing that people need across communities. Instead, we saw yet more reliance on private sector, the staple of the Fine Gael diet. Rather than restricting evictions, Minister Harris prefers more renters' credit. But what use to renters is getting less than 1 month's rent back when you live, as so many of our constituents and so many people do, in permanent fear of losing your home, permanent fear of eviction. And rather than state action, Minister Harris prefers more subsidies for developers, waiving development levies. When that approach has failed for the past 8 years, how can it deliver change now? Instead of making homes more affordable, the reality is prices are at record highs, and now is not the time for the government to double down on bad policy, because the housing disaster is the civil rights issue of this generation, and indeed it's multi-generational. We all know this. It cuts across and affects every generation and every community. And on day one, the incoming Taoiseach should recognise that by committing to end no-fault evictions, to make renters safe, by regulating short-term lets, by transforming the Land Development Agency into a truly effective state construction company, and by delivering 50,000 new builds and 50,000 deep retrofits each year, with adequate provision within that of social and affordable homes. We can find enough construction workers to deliver this. But as a minister, the incoming Taoiseach would not even pay apprentices the minimum wage, let alone mount a proactive campaign to recruit construction workers. In the section of your address on climate, the incoming Taoiseach assured that Fine Gael would not lecture voters on climate action, perhaps a barb about some of his government colleagues. In fairness, he made good on that commitment right away, because the section on climate action was dropped from the speech. No lecturing, not a word. And this does not bode well for commitment within government to a cleaner environment, for cheaper bills, better public transport or warmer homes. And indeed, the passage that was on the cutting room floor made no reference to really effective climate action measures, such as supports for retrofitting homes. The closest we saw was a promise to farmers that the government knows it cannot keep, a promise on nitrates derogation. And that irony will not be wasted on many farmers after 2 consecutive wet seasons due to climate change. Lofty promises, devoid of substance, are a feature of other areas too. Deputy Harris boasted of his party's achievements in healthcare, but that praise jars with the experiences of so many people who've told me about spending hours or even days on hospital trolleys. It jars with the experiences of healthcare staff running on empty, suffering the consequences of the HSE recruitment embargo and of low pay. And of course, it's contradicted by the Fine Gael pitting of employers against workers when it comes to policies like sick pay, or your delaying of our bill to provide for reproductive healthcare leave following pregnancy loss. Because health is a holistic issue, and we deserve a government which recognises that. We need to ensure that staffing emergency departments, creating healthy workplaces and implementation of disability rights are taken seriously by this government. It's welcome to see the incoming Taoiseach's commitment, indeed a recommitment, to ratifying the UN CRPD optional protocol. But we need meaningful measures to make change for people's everyday lives, scrapping the green paper, ending the means test on the carers allowance, ensuring assessments are available and that diagnosis leads to supports in the home or the classroom. And without that, promises to unblock the backlog in assessments are empty rhetoric. And in other areas of government policy, we need to go beyond rhetoric. We need to go beyond censure. We need to hear more than words that censure Netanyahu. This government needs to act with Spain to recognise Palestinian statehood. You need to pass the Occupied Territories Bill with the support of opposition. You need to create meaningful sanctions on the Israeli government to help bring about a ceasefire and an end to the suffering in Gaza. Deeds, not words. Today's vote, we know, is a foregone conclusion. But how the incoming Taoiseach uses his new position is key. This government cannot pretend that this is business as usual, because Ireland is not working for far too many. And the Labour Party will not support this cosmetic changeover. Ours is a vision for a fairer Ireland and a more equal Ireland, supported by an interventionist state. We cannot be accomplices to a government which does not share our values of equality, solidarity and fairness. I do undertake, however, that we will continue to work constructively from opposition, to disagree agreeably, as they say. We did not, in fact, play populism on the vote of the order of business today. We will, of course, as a serious party, do all we can to hold this new Taoiseach and this government to account. But we will also commit to working with you where we can achieve common purpose, and we will be honest and fair, because our democracy is too precious to be denigrated in this House or in social media. So I'm asking the new Taoiseach to reciprocate that undertaking. Colleagues, there's less than a year to go, and we will all speak more later on what the new Cabinet can and must do. But for now, my call to Deputy Harris is this. If a general election will not be called now, as it should be, then you must commit to serving the people in a way that matters and to letting these houses carry out our constitutional function. So I'm asking you to stop blocking opposition bills, to publish the meaningful policies we need on building homes, increasing hospital capacity, on disability rights and on welcoming refugees. Change is not easy, it takes courage, and if you won't go to the people, Deputy Harris and your colleagues, we hope you will act to deliver real change, because we need to see that change and we need to see an Ireland that works for all.
Dr. Holly Cairns, Social Democrats.
I want to start today by again wishing Leo Varadkar the very best in the future. A record of public service in this House that extends for nearly 2 decades, including 13 years in Cabinet and 2 terms of Taoiseach, has to be commended. It requires hard work, dedication and many personal sacrifices. Those sacrifices were not just borne by the outgoing Taoiseach, but by his partner and his family, and I think it's important to acknowledge that and their contribution too. Today, the Dáil will elect Simon Harris as the 3rd Taoiseach of this government. It's a job more demanding than most of us can imagine, and on a personal note, I'd like to wish him well as Taoiseach and in his new role as leader of Fine Gael. However, we are facing serious challenges as a country, and in order to address them, we need new ideas. For that, we need a new government. So today, the Social Democrats will not be supporting his nomination. We need to see a radical change in approach of the crisis facing us in housing, healthcare, disability services, childcare and climate action. The change that we need cannot be delivered by a Taoiseach from the same party with the same programme for government and the same policies. The issues we face and will continue to face will worsen until we elect a government with a fundamentally new approach. Ceann Comhairle, I want to start by welcoming the incoming Taoiseach's commitment to set up a new Cabinet Committee on Disability. A focus on disability is so desperately needed. Successive Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Green Party governments have left disability services threadbare, underfunded and understaffed. Disabled people and their families have to fight every step of the way for access to basic services. The reality is, it's ruining people's lives. We've heard enough platitudes. We've heard enough vague commitments. We need a government that will provide the services that people are entitled to. Assessment of need, essential therapies, personal assistance hours, the list goes on and on and on. We need a government that recognises the cost of disability with a cost of disability payment. We need a government that will replace the personal transport schemes that Fine Gael abolished over a decade ago and promised to replace now. We need a government that will provide actual pay parity for Section 39 workers if we're to have any hope of staffing our Children's Disability Network teams. And we need a firm commitment to naming the date for the long overdue ratification of the optional protocol. People's lives are being destroyed due to completely inadequate or non-existent services. Services that this government actually don't seem to believe they have an obligation to provide. And with that fundamentally damaging ideology at the heart of disability policy, I've come to the conclusion that the only thing that will improve the provision of disability services in this country is a change in government. But I hope that you will prove me wrong. The housing disaster is the biggest challenge facing this country. We need a government that will treat it as the national emergency that it is. People on average incomes have lost all hope that they will ever be able to buy a home like their parents did. The lives of over 500,000 adults still sleeping in their childhood bedrooms have been put on hold. We speak about this locked-out generation a lot in this chamber, and Simon Harris has spoken about him quite a lot himself over the last few days. Because we all recognise how disastrous that reality is for people's lives and for their mental health. To have the absolute basics of adulthood just kept out of reach, unable to have privacy, to have independence, to feel any hope for a future for yourself in Ireland. How can anyone start a family when they're always a letter away from eviction? given a few short weeks to pack up their belongings, all while struggling to find a new home in the middle of a housing crisis. A home they can afford to rent that's close enough to their workplace, to their children's school, to their own parents who provide the childcare that they can't access or can't afford. It's stressful, it's damaging, and it's preventable. Because there is another way. We could introduce a no-fault eviction ban to stem the tide of rising homelessness and provide some security for renters. We could introduce a 3-year rent freeze so those struggling to pay rent have some relief and time to find their feet. We could stop the bulk buying of homes by investment funds so that first-time buyers are not bidding against billion-euro funds. And crucially, we need to acknowledge that the developer-led model of housing dependent on the private sector for delivery has failed. We could address the affordability crisis at the heart of this housing emergency by delivering social and affordable homes at scale so that the dream of home ownership can become a reality. All of this is achievable. Nobody is saying that it is easy, but none of the crises facing us in housing are insurmountable. We just need the political will and the determination to change course. The state needs to stop outsourcing its responsibilities to the private sector. Essential public services like housing, healthcare, disability services, childcare are fundamental human rights. They should be provided by the state and accessible to all, regardless of your income. Every party in this House signed up to a plan stating as much for the future of our health service. In 2017, when the incoming Taoiseach was Health Minister, there was cross-party support for the Sláintecare plan, but implementation has been painfully slow. Nearly 900,000 patients are in waiting lists. Every day, hundreds of people languish on hospital trolleys all over the country, while children with scoliosis wait for years in agony for surgery. Providing quality, accessible and timely healthcare is a basic requirement of the state. But in the Midwest, the situation has deteriorated to the extent that people are actually afraid to go to the emergency department at University Hospital Limerick. This should not and cannot be tolerated. What changes are this government going to implement to make a real difference? What are they going to do in the next year that they haven't done in the last 4? How can we rely on this government to deliver crucial healthcare reform? When 7 years into a 10-year plan for Sláintecare, we are nowhere near where we should be. Ceann Comhairle, too often this government has excelled at climate rhetoric but failed at climate action. We have a responsibility to farming communities, to coastal communities, to future generations to take steps that are ambitious enough to meet the enormous challenge ahead of us. But instead, we're missing our targets. The leader of the Green Party summed it up perfectly. We're only warming up and are on course to face up to €8 billion in fines by 2030. Every second we wait to take action increases the existential threat and the costs that we face down the line. It increases the risk of floods, failed crops, coastal erosion, and irreversible damages to our ecosystem. We need a government that will approach the climate action not as a burden, but as an opportunity. We could have warmer homes, we could have pristine waters, we could protect and rejuvenate our biodiversity, we could become a net export of energy by the end of the decade, we could be held up as the example for the future of agriculture. We have the resources to make all of this happen and help those communities and industries that will be most impacted. This is why the Social Democrats want to see the budget surplus used to create a €6 billion climate transformation fund. This would include funding for rural communities for farmers to ensure a fair transition. Because change is coming and we have to embrace it. The approach of this government of leading farmers to a cliff edge before pushing them off is not just dishonest, it has been a disaster for the future of agriculture and for our natural environment. Ceann Comhairle, the potential and desire for change in Ireland is huge. People know that we can do better. They are demanding we do better. But I don't believe that a better Ireland can be achieved with more of the same old approach that we've seen from Fine Gael for the last 13 years. Fine Gael has been in office for almost my entire adult life. The incoming Taoiseach has been in office for almost his entire adult life. Where is the new energy? Where is the new approach? Because honestly, I can't see it. The Social Democrats will not be supporting the nomination of Simon Harris today because we want a new approach, and for that we need a change in government.
Thank you, Deputy Kern. We move now to People Before Profit Solidarity, and we're going to hear Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett sharing with Deputy Mick Barry.
Fine Gael are putting a brave face on today's events, but the real background to the ascension to office of Simon Harris is a Taoiseach and 1/3 of Fine Gael TDs abandoning the Fine Gael ship and being afraid to face the electorate in the next general election. And the reason they are abandoning the Fine Gael ship and don't want to face the electorate is because they know they have failed hundreds of thousands of people in this country on the most basic things of providing secure and affordable housing, of providing a decent health service that works, on protecting our children with special needs and those with disabilities, and providing the public services that make life bearable for people and protect people from the crippling cost of living crisis that has been inflicted on them over the last number of years. I find it particularly remarkable that the outgoing Taoiseach has attempted to absolve himself from these failures and the reasons why he's abandoning ship by making reference to international origins to the problems we face. That is really quite extraordinary. The reality is we are one of the wealthiest countries in the world where profits for corporations have gone through the roof in the period that Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have been in government. Almost quadrupled since 2011. And in a wealthy country where profits are being raked in by the corporations, by the energy companies, by the corporate landlords and the vulture funds, you have left us with the worst housing and homelessness crisis the country has ever seen, and it continues to get worse day in, day out. It is shameful that there are 4,000 children in homeless accommodation and that number continues to rise. It is absolutely shameful that in a country as wealthy as ours, a generation of young and working people are priced out of the possibility of ever owning their own home, and for many of them cannot afford the utterly unaffordable rents, and we are seeing the return of mass emigration. Young people coming out of the universities and colleges that Simon Harris has been in charge of, leaving because they do not believe, they have no confidence that this government is capable of giving them a secure and affordable roof over their head. So the skills and the talents they have developed being taken elsewhere to other countries because they believe there is no future for them. The cost of living crisis that Taoiseach Varadkar referred to, saying the worst is over. Tell that to people who got their ESB and gas bills in the early months of this year. Absolutely crucifying. Or mortgage interest rate hikes that have seen people's mortgage interest payments go up by hundreds of euros every month. for many absolutely unsustainable, or of course the profiteering of rents which are now in Dublin €2,000 to €2,500 a month. Extraordinary. 24 or 30,000 euro a year on rent on your after-tax income. Unaffordable for the vast majority of working people. Or the reference to special needs. All I am hearing at the moment in my clinic, and I've heard it around this Dáil over recent weeks, is children who can't get appointments with the Child and Disability Network teams, which are chronically understaffed, completely under-resourced and understaffed CAMS teams, schools that are actually seeing cuts in special education teaching resources, or who can't get the funding for autism classes that they are actually looking for. The failure to ratify the optional protocol for people with disabilities, the shocking fact that rather than give people rights, give people with disabilities and carers rights, they are means-tested and often denied the supports and the rights that they deserve. And I have to say, I found it particularly shocking at the Ardèche at the weekend, where there were references to Fine Gael going back to core values and back to basics. That should be a reason for people to be scared, because Fine Gael's core values over the last 10 years are to back the corporations, to back the landlords, back the vulture funds, while working people get it in the neck, while they can't deliver affordable housing for people, and when our health service is crumbling. And the first sign of this is the kite flying around the plan to renege on the promise to extend sick leave next year for workers. So already the new Harris regime is suggesting that it's going to renege on a promise to give additional sick leave to workers in order to back the interests of big business. And then, of course, there was the standing ovation over the words Simon Harris used about being repulsed, rightly, at the actions of Israel in terms of their genocidal attack on the people of Palestine. But the same Ardèche voted heavily against the Occupied Territories Bill that would actually impose sanctions on Israel for its brutal and cruel treatment of the Palestinian people. Very lastly, Minister Harris, I was asked from somebody from your constituency to mention the shameful decision for the Mother and Baby Redress Scheme to exclude the West Bank orphanage in Greystones in your constituency. Something that they were recommended to be included in all the mother and baby reports and have been shamefully excluded, and they asked me to take this day and this opportunity to ask you to address that utter wrong.
Deputy Barry.
Count Corlett, Deputy Harris has chosen a song from the 1970s as his new theme song. Bachman Turner Overdrive's You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. It's a great song, but I can think of one or two other tunes from that decade that might be more appropriate. For example, I can think of The Who, Won't Get Fooled Again, from 1971. It might sum up the mood of the electorate a little better, and it does have the closing lyric, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. More seriously, on March the 26th, 2020, this Dáil gave a standing ovation to all of the frontline workers who were risking their lives for us as COVID struck. You yourself were Caretaker Minister for Health at the time. Last Sunday week, Easter Sunday, the government cut the pay of public health workers, many of them nurses, who contracted COVID in those times and have suffered from it to this day, long COVID. Leo Varadkar was Taoiseach the day their pay was cut. You will be Taoiseach by this afternoon. So, are you going to reverse that pay cut? Or are you going to let it stand? Because I put it to you, if you do decide to let it stand, you are starting off in your new job standing over one of the most miserable actions taken by any Irish government in recent years. And I'll be awaiting your response on that one later today with interest. You project yourself as the great listener, but your track record of listening to trade unionists and to workers' concerns is actually very poor. Ambulance paramedics fighting union busting were forced into the first national ambulance strike in the history of this state on your watch as Health Minister. Nurses fighting for a decent pay increase were forced into only the second national nurses' strike in the history of the state. Now you seem to be flying kites about the possibility of delaying improvements to workers' sick leave entitlements. Try to do this, Minister, and you will meet a storm of opposition. This is a theme I intend to return to this evening. The country needs a general election, a radical change of direction. It is not to your credit that you are choosing to deny the people a general election, nor to the credit of those independent deputies who are assisting you in denying it. The shortest-lived Taoiseach in the history of this state was John Bruton, 924 days. Even if you manage to stretch this out until March of next year, I think you are going to be the new holder of that record.
Thank you, Deputy.
I'll conclude by saying the people will see that the new boss is the same as the old boss, and I definitely don't think that they're going to be fooled again.
You might bring a turntable with you the next time. We're going to the regional group, to Deputy Michael Lowry sharing with Deputy Peadar Tobin and Deputy Matt Shanahan.
Count Corla, I will be supporting the nomination of Minister Simon Harris for Taoiseach. I could join in the soundbite populist chorus of negativity. I could contend that everything in the country is a disaster and demand a general election. That might make better headlines, but that's not my style of politics. There is no denying that we have serious problems in housing, health, and particularly at UHL in Limerick, the disability sector, family carers, agriculture and small business. There are many issues requiring very urgent attention, and I don't see how any of these problems will be solved by putting them in cold storage for up to 10 months while we fight a general election and form a new government. I believe that politics is practical. It is about working together to improve the reality of everyday lives, about action and delivery and not empty outrage. Unlike some, I do not believe that being an independent deputy means sitting on your hands, sniping, criticising and howling at the moon and achieving nothing. Adversarial debate is healthy, but I don't believe in slamming doors on the possibility of progress and the public good for the sake of maintaining a facade. Slamming a door leaves both sides isolated. I believe that there is more to be gained for my constituents by working with government ministers of whatever persuasion and their departments to achieve social justice and reward for work and enterprise. That has been my consistent approach. I am here to work for the small business owners who are struggling with spiralling costs. These are the risk takers, the entrepreneurs who contribute so much to wealth creation, to funding our social welfare system, to giving local employment. They need immediate, tangible support. I'm here to work for farmers who are literally bogged down not only by the weather, but by debt, bureaucracy and the challenge of change. These are the people who put food on our tables, support our economy, underpin our way of life. They don't need lip service. They need real solutions to their problems and urgent practical assistance. Lack of housing is the scourge of our time, and irrespective of who is in government, it will take several more years to catch up on the supply due to the failures of the past. And we cannot build houses for our people without a skilled workforce. The apprenticeship scheme implemented by Minister Harris is a real positive. The ETB Training Centre in Thurles is a model of excellence that should be expanded and replicated right across the country. The chaos in our national broadcaster must be brought under control. A new funding system is urgently required and should incorporate those in the sector who are presently excluded. Local broadcasters are the first source of information and discourse for rural Ireland. They should have a trusted place in national debate. They must be acknowledged, respected and financially supported. As Taoiseach-elect, you have a short time to put your stamp on government. It is a daunting task, I wish you well and hope you can fulfil your ambition.
Margaret the Count Corlia. Simon Harris will break a few records today. A man who took his seat at the 15th count, a member of a political party that came third in the last general election, will become Taoiseach today. And the Taoiseach carousel continues in this political bubble, where we have the people of this republic continuously locked out of the decision-making process. And there's no doubt that Simon Harris is very good at spin. I've never seen anybody be able to distance themselves from themselves so well as he has done in the last number of weeks. He's flipped from a committed proponent of the current hate speech law to a critique of elements of it. He was a pro-life campaigner to the person who introduced that heartbreaking law, and he has also been the person who has become elevated now to the position of Taoiseach, posing as a new broom. But the truth of the matter is, despite the fact that he is throwing promises around like confetti, he is the Varadkar continuity candidate. He has been a minister for 8 years. He owns the highest homelessness numbers in the history of the state. He owns the highest house prices in the history of the state. He owns the highest rents in the history of this state. And I think he also personifies the South Dublin political bubble that can't see beyond the M50, where establishment TDs talk to themselves and the NGOs and ignore the people. I don't believe he is a man of convictions. I believe his motto is, "There go my people, I must find out which way they're going, and then I will lead them." Simon Harris has a record which I believe has cost this country dearly. He threatened striking nurses with financial penalties. He announced free smear tests for women to save himself, placing so much pressure on the system and leading to dangerous delays for women. In the early days of COVID, he refused to meet with the nursing home sector, which was the most vulnerable element of that crisis. Indeed, at that time, thousands of people were moved from hospitals into nursing homes. Many of them weren't tested, which seeded COVID right through the nursing home system and led to many deaths. During COVID, he cancelled cancer screening and reduced cancer services, leading to 100,000 fewer women screened for breast cancer and a tidal wave of more advanced cancers. And the billions of overspend in the National Children's Hospital was, and I quote Simon Harris, not a scandal. In 2017, he promised that no child would go beyond 4 months for an operation. A PQ from Aontú has shown that 55 children just in Temple Street and Crumlin alone are today waiting for more than a year for scoliosis surgery. And Simon Harris was the Minister for Justice for the first half of last year. And during that time, violent crimes increased, the number of Gardaí increased, number of Gardaí resigning and retiring increased, and the number of Gardaí being attacked increased as well. I do think this is a historic day. I think we're seeing the elevation of a caretaker Taoiseach, a Taoiseach who will have the record of having the shortest term in the history of the state.
Thank you, Deputy Shanahan.
Firstly, I want to wish fair winds to Deputy Varadkar. While you got some big calls right, the macroeconomy, the pandemic and Brexit, this has not been a government for all people, nor for all parts of Ireland. People have become divided during this government. It has pitched urban against rural, motorist against cyclist, agriculture against the environmentalist, house buyers against immigrants. The social contract for young people is burst. Expectations for housing, good work, services have all been knocked back. The Dublin Cork Cabinet have starved large swathes of Ireland of investment, of development, of economic hope for a better life. The borders, North West, Midlands and my own region, the South East, have roared at Cabinet members to advance meaningful projects outside of their own patches. The administrative burden on our families, our farmers, our small business and home builders is absolutely out of control. As politics fails these people, their anger rises. It is a political mistake not to listen. Beyond reducing bureaucracy and supporting agriculture and enterprise, in my region we have 3 tests for the new Taoiseach: 24/7, our airport and the SETU PPP and allied promised capital development. People are wondering in the South East, how will our new Taoiseach change things for us? As Minister for Health, we saw you spending on the Dublin Children's Hospital while failing to support capital spending at University Hospital Waterford. You are closely associated with the Department of Health's blocking of 24/7 cardiac care at UHW with the shoddy Herity report. You know, we have still not seen the National Cardiac Review that you commissioned as Health Minister in 2017. As Minister for Higher Education, you are closely associated with preventing a full university in Waterford, forcing an underfunded merger between WIT and IT Carlow, and allowing unfettered spending and borrowing in the national university sector. Meanwhile, SETU Waterford has not seen a single new teaching building in over 20 years. You promised new disciplines, buildings, lecturers' contracts, a borrowing framework and student accommodation, none of which have happened yet. The regional southeast brain drain has worsened. You are known for your abilities, Minister, to communicate, but talk without action remains just talk. Our late engagement over this vote has signalled to me that my priorities, actually my region's priorities, those being 24/7, the airport, the Equitable University Funding Programme, supports for agriculture and business sectors, although in your programme for government, are not fully on your radar. For that reason, alas, I cannot vote for you as Taoiseach today. And yet, I hope you are a successful Taoiseach, a Simon 2.0 that actually fixes things, delivers a form of leadership that renews hope in politics, delivers better, simpler services to all people in parts of this republic. But most of all, I hope your tenure signals that at last the winds of positive change for Waterford and the South East are coming. Such change is the acid test for me and my constituents that finally Cabinet is willing to listen and deliver for Waterford and the South East region.
Thank you, Deputy Shanahan. Now the Rural Independent Group, where Deputy Matthew McGrath is sharing with colleagues. Deputy
Ceann, I do wish to propose an alternative in this chamber here today in the name of Deputy Michael Healy-Rae, who has represented Kerry here in this chamber for many, many years, and on Kerry County Council for many years before that. I believe he is well capable of carrying out the task because he has the understanding of the people, and like myself, he knows what the people need and what they're concerned about. I believe we're the only alternative group here in the Dáil. On many occasions we have proven that. And I say, I agree with Deputy Burke, who said democracy shouldn't be taken for granted. And I agree with that. First of all, I want to wish Deputy Radker well and good health long into the future. Ceann, I have to say that in the recent referendum and canvassing generally for our three local election candidates in Kerry, I never see people more angry or disillusioned. Farmers they see themselves being vilified and targeted here every day. Even last year, Minister Ryan ensured that the loose was painted white, 9 carriages, and advising people not to drink milk. I ask each and every one of you here today, what would we be like if our mothers didn't give us milk when we were growing up and after being born? Ridiculous stuff. And like the suggestion that one car would do 30 people in the community and that we should bring wolves into the countryside. That's what Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have supported, that kind of carry-on for the last 4 to 5 years. Businesses are closing. In Killarney, another restaurant has closed today. And because of the VAT and the increase in the VAT and energy and rates cost. Housing, we know it failed completely. The immigration debacle, where over €2 billion has been spent, and even spent €860,000 to bring dogs and cats into the country for these immigrants. Squandering money, and yet people are out in the morning paying 40%, those working paying 40% tax and 4.5% USC charges down that. Health, we can't even get doctors. You can get a vet quicker into any farm than to get a doctor in the evening or weekends. It's a sad state that sick people can't just get a doctor. We see in the recent referendum where there was a consensus between all the parties, including Sinn Féin, who seem to be overlapping and lining up to go with Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil.
Are you going to give way to your
Sinn Féin have been saying that Deputy Harris isn't fit to be Taoiseach. Why didn't he oppose him? Wasn't this your chance here today to oppose him? And I'm giving the independent deputies here in this chamber today, if there's any scintilla of independence in you, now's your time to come out and vote for an independent candidate for Taoiseach here today. This is your chance. But the most of you that say your independence, you're Fine Gael attacked, and there's no difference at all now for the people outside to look in here. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are the same. Sinn Féin are lining up to go with either of them. And the Greens will be written off with the help of God.
Matty,
I rise today as well to second the nomination of Council of Deputy Michael Hilly-Ray, because I believe he's a man who listens to the people. In politics since he was 10 years of age, canvassed in by-elections, and Éisteach to Shadina. Listen to the people, which you've lost, completely lost. And we need to have a contest in this House. We can't just move around and have no election, and that's why we're doing this today. I want to say also to wish Leo Deputy Varadkar the best in his retirement, and as well, if Minister Harris, which he will be elected, to wish him well and his family and his wife and children as well. While we extend, as I said, the sudden departure of outgoing Taoiseach Deputy Varadkar in the government's final year creates serious instability and surrenders to the public service. It's akin to the captain of a ship being forced off when there's a shipwreck, which he's meant to stay till last. Let's be clear, Minister Harris and his few new Fine Gael ministers bring no novelty and no change to the current Fine Gael government's legacy. The legacy will be mentioned for their deceit, incompetence and decision to stop listening to the people. It has burdened the public with higher taxes and disregarded the voices of the ordinary people, both urban and rural. From the outset, the three-party coalition lacked a plan, a vision and any bit of empathy with the people that elected them. The people voted in 2020 for change. They got no change. A cobbled-together government by Deputy Martin and Deputy Varadkar. Deputy Martin was the architect because he didn't want to be the first Fianna Fáil Taoiseach, leader, never to be Taoiseach. And I say to you, Minister Harris, how can we have trust? I hold a letter here that you wrote to the pro-life campaign in 2011 in Wicklow. Dear pro-life campaign, I'm contesting the next election. I'm happy so proud to support you and enact the pro-life. In response to your questions, yes, if elected at all, I will oppose any legislation to introduce abortion in Ireland. And yes, I will support legislation that protects the human embryo and protects babies at all costs. And the legislation you brought in, how can we trust in you? The legislation was the most vicious and rigorous and disgusting that ever happened. Your legacy in health, the Children's Hospital, you made a whole lot of it. The scoliosis promise, the most fortunate people that were here a few weeks ago, that are waiting, you said 4 months, they're waiting years, languishing. Also, your attack, Fine Gael's attack on local government. You demolished local democracy. You set up Irish water, an unmitigated disaster. Many other. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Conglomerates is the name of the game, but for Fianna Fáil, in the beef barons, in CU Hay, Smith Roadstone, all those people, all the big monopolies then are squeezing the lifeblood out of our communities, not what the people of Ireland give their lives for here. So I say to you, it's a sad legacy. Moving the deck chairs on this ship tonight is not going to do anything else for anybody. So I say to you, call an election and go to the people and get a fresh mandate and do something for the people.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. I start by wishing former Taoiseach Leo Varadkar and former Minister Simon Coveney the very best in their future. This will be the third Taoiseach since government was formed in 2020, and this in itself shows how dysfunctional this government has been in the last 4 years. This government lacks understanding, lacks the ability or hunger to look after the ordinary people. This government to date has lacked common sense, and the people of this country are sick to their teeth of this government. The simple way to see how disconnected this government was with most of the opposition in the recent referendum, where people spoke emphatically, with an overwhelming majority of people rejecting Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil
called the Green, Sinn Féin, Labour and Social Democrats' plan to remove women from our constitution. But it is not this alone that has people angered. Look at our housing crisis, which has ran out of all control, and a government running along happy with this crisis of 14,000 homeless, many of them children. Your inaction for housing in our cities, not allowing much needed development to build up where infrastructures already are in place, sees homelessness numbers crisis getting worse by day. In our countryside, between county development plans drawn up with a negative view to rural planning and another stumbling block of a planning regulator put in place by government, has seen young people coming to me weekly in high numbers being refused planning and being refused a chance to get their lives together off the ground. These are people who have a sight from their parents, who have a mortgage sorted, and won't be any burden on the state, but are refused for one reason or another, adding to the homeless list and our housing crisis. Our health crisis in this country is nothing short of appalling, and was the cause of the last government collapsing while you were Minister for Health, Minister Harris. We have close to 1 million people on waiting lists in this island, people in dreadful pain, seeking hip or knee surgeries or cataract surgeries to save their sight. And the list goes on and on. Thousands on hospital trolleys for days in some cases, seeking a bed, but left there in pain. These are the people who got up early in the morning in this country and worked hard and are left there in their time of need. Look at agriculture in this country, where farmers continuously tell me they are being treated as environmental terrorists, even that we have one of the best agricultural run farms in this country. Are you, as Taoiseach, going to allow the Green Party continue to do absolute wreck to agriculture? That's a question you have to answer here today. Are you going to be a change and stand up for the people of this country? What Fine Gael did one time, they did one time stand up for the farmers of this country, but you've turned your back on them in recent years. And I'm asking you that here today. And there's a crisis on the ground as we speak. And we're getting no assistance, no farmers getting any assistance from government. Farmers are suffering severe mental health with the weather the way it is at the moment. I hope you'll announce a package this evening. Also the same with fisheries. You stood idly by year in, year out, as the only deal you got for fishermen in all that many years is a decommissioning deal to get rid of Irish trawlers out of Irish waters. It's a scandalous situation. Small businesses, 13 to 9%. You raised the VAT from 9 to 13.5%. You're putting small businesses, cafe owners, restaurants, pubs out of business, and you don't care. I don't understand what kind of a government here, and many more. Student accommodation, hate speech, all these migration, all these issues need to be discussed in proper Taoiseach before anybody would support, and anybody that supports you here today, in my view, that and will lead to further closures of pubs, of cafes, are equally responsible.
Thank you, Deputy. Please.
For those closures in their own constituencies. Thank you.
Go to the Rural Independent Group.
Thanks,
the Independent Group.
Thanks,
Deputy Joan Collins is sharing with Deputies Connolly, McNamara, Harkin and Fitzmaurice.
Thank you. There's been a lot of fanfare that this is a new start for Fine Gael and this government and the country. In reality, what we see is the same old, stale, out-of-touch political system that has been in power since the foundation of the state. You can play political musical chairs, give everything a fresh look, but this is just two sides of the same coin. Another Taoiseach from Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, the parties that have led this country into crisis after crisis, a broken housing system with record homelessness, record house prices, record rent, continuation with no-fault evictions and no end in sight, underfunded, understaffed health and public services, high levels of low pay and growing numbers of people in deprivation, at risk of poverty and inconsistent poverty. This is why, while the rich get richer, the top 1% have accumulated 70 times more wealth than the bottom half of this country since 2012, leaving the two richest people in Ireland owning 5 billion more wealth than the bottom 50% combined. This is a fundamental issue. What 9 decades of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil rule has left us with is a country for the rich. Taxes on Irish workers are 15% above the EU average, while we have one of the lowest corporation taxes in the world. Our employers' PRSI contribution is 66% below the EU average, and our taxes on wealth are less than half of most EU countries. 9 decades of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have created a country where working-class people pay high taxes for failing public services, while the rich pay low taxes and can afford the best private services. From talking to people in my constituency, I don't think anyone buys for 1 second that this is a new beginning. This is the same old out-of-touch government with the same old out-of-touch parties that created a country that is getting harder and harder to make a decent life. You created the housing crisis, the crisis in our public services, and have stood over a massive transfer of wealth to the rich while deprivation and consistent poverty grows. We can no longer afford a political system that allows this to continue while everyone else struggles to find homes, services and decent wages. We can no longer afford to have Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in power. Today is about the politics, not about the personalities. This is why people want a general election. Many people want a general election now. It is why I am not voting for the proposed Taoiseach or from the proposed nomination from the Rural Independents.
Deputy Councillor Connolly.
Agus Boatum Cogorges her anúl don ir Taoiseach Leo Varadkar hí tú gantal le de freigrí I gcónaí agus haní sé sin lom in anon nar haní na freigrí lom. Agus Boatum céad míle fáilte chu rih clán Simon Harris an seo an Van Céile Cuive na Tishmóthirí Bart agus Mary agus na Gasúr Killian agus Saoirse Gandát is privilege as machas amach agus lá starúil inniu agus Furir ní bhaimé an mahachioch the hort ditcha, bunia the policy, ní level parsanta. Today is a very important day, without a doubt, for the Fine Gael party and for your family, and it's an absolute privilege, and I welcome your family here. You will not be having my support based on the policies that your party and your colleagues have continued with for years, where you talk about collateral damage. And this was encapsulated lately for me by Professor John Fitzgerald when he dealt with the Germany saying we had a very housing crisis. And Professor John Fitzgerald said they were simply jealous and our problems arose from a successful economy. And I think that's what you accept. The problems are collateral to a successful economy, and I fundamentally disagree with that. Today, as I speak, there are 13,841 children, people and children homeless directly as a result of your policy. Yesterday in Galway, 71 people were on trolleys. Less than a year ago, the HICWA visited Galway and said when there were 25 on trolleys, it was grossly overcrowded. None of these policies happened by accident. They are the direct result of year government, continuous governments, relying on a market, commodifying everything, and having no sense whatsoever as to what a republic truly means, and what public services truly mean, and what equality truly means. You're all waiting for the boats to rise with the tide. Nothing has changed as a result of COVID. Nothing has changed as a result of climate change, where we urgently require transformative change. They're not empty words. And when the former Taoiseach stands up, and the Taoiseach stands up today and talks about these problems being caused by outside events, you're totally wrong and refusing to accept or look in the mirror and realise they're directly arising from your policies.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd like to begin by paying tribute to Deputies Coveney and Varadkar on their contribution to Irish life at some difficult junctures. Moving on to Deputy Harris, it's a motion of confidence in you as Taoiseach. Over the weekend you promised that you would have the back of farmers, but you have served in a government which has been on the back of farmers. Like many small business owners, the only thing they get from government is a letter warning of new regulations threatening new fines. The cost of government in this state has ballooned since you entered Cabinet in 2016. It was 68 billion then, it's 110 billion now. Can anybody in this state say that the services on which they rely have increased by that proportion, that they're getting much better services now than they did then? Can anybody say that the infrastructure on which they rely to get to work, to live, is improving by that magnitude? So where is the money going? It is simply unclear, because anybody who rings any government department now will be put on hold and will be almost certainly not get through to anybody. They simply won't get an answer. The civil service do a wonderful job sometimes, but they require leadership, and they have become complacent and moribund under the lifetime of this government. Thank you. For that reason, I'm afraid I can't vote confidence in you.
Minister.
Minister, I cannot vote for you as Taoiseach because after 4 years of this government and 13 years of Fine Gael in government, you have not delivered for the North West. Earlier, Taoiseach Varadkar, who I wish well in his retirement from office, spoke of global megatrends influencing outcomes. Well, in my view, the only way to counter those trends in the context of balanced regional development is to have systemic and substantial policy-driven change across all government departments. You have not done that, and so regions like the North West lag behind. You've not addressed or delivered housing for the North West. CSO housing commencement figures show that in 2023, the 4 counties I represent, Sligo, Leitrim, North Roscommon and South Donegal, were in the bottom 10 counties when it came to housing commencements on a per capita basis. You've not delivered on health, where Trolley Watch figures show that from 2011, when Fine Gael entered government, the numbers on trolleys at Sligo University Hospital have increased by over 250%, while the national increase is 50%. The figures speak for themselves. You've not delivered on agriculture, where you were cheerleaders for the nature restoration law, without mitigating outcomes for the drained peatlands in the North West and no ring-fenced funding. Finally, Minister, I fully recognise that today is a momentous day for you and your family. And while I won't be voting for you as Taoiseach, on a personal level, I wish you and your family all that's good.
On a personal level, first of all, the outgoing Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, and Minister Coveney, on your future, I want to wish you the best of luck. This is impersonal towards the new Taoiseach, but I cannot support a government that you have a minister there that has gone out to Brussels, and the Irish farmers under the nature restoration law are relying on Italy, they're relying on the Dutch, they're relying on several other countries, and you won't listen to the Irish farmers here. And this government is supporting that. Minister, or future Taoiseach, you also stated in Galway at the weekend, I saw on the headlines, that you have the back of rural Ireland. When you drove from Galway in your state car back to Dublin, when people in Roscommon, in Lochfuinchina, 92-year-old, 87-year-old, had their houses been flooded, are looking at water higher than their kitchens, and ye have not signed an emergency order to help those people. This is a problem not only in Roscommon, but it will be everywhere around the country. And you spoke in Galway about having the backs of farmers. It's a knife in the back that has been given to the farming community right around this country. And I cannot and will not support a government that is decimating parts of rural Ireland. The best thing, or the thing that you have done most in rural Ireland, is cause protest with basically not talking, not listening, not giving the services to the people that require it in rural Ireland. On a personal basis, I wish you luck, but I cannot support this government with what's going on, especially with the Green Party.
Now, Deputy Violet Ann Wynne, please.
Count Corla, I wish the incoming Taoiseach the very best. The public want delivery, not an intent to deliver, not promises to deliver that are broken time and time again. They need delivery now that is real, that is tangible, that improves their lives, not make it worse. The reality is that so many right now are so busy trying to survive without access to vital services. They're trying to survive without a home. They have needed a government that will hear them so much that they respond effectively, not talk down to them as if they, the government, while I accept they sit in this very important building, this chamber is not the real world. So they need to stop assuming that they know much more and therefore they know better. This is not the case. Those who know best will always be those who are impacted and affected, and they should always be front and centre. That is the duty of care that has been missed, not just in this Dáil term, but historically. Look, the reality is that the vast majority of the public watching today could care less about who sits in that chair. so long as they get the services and the supports that they need. Not a skirting around the edges, such as no referenda in sight to make housing a right for all, no legislation for the right to personal assistance hours and a centralised system. They need recognition of the hardship that they have suffered because that and what they need has not been delivered. We have needed a ban on no-fault evictions yesterday. That was not a big ask, especially considering that we are an outlier in Europe on this matter. A commitment finally to the reinstatement of Ennis Emergency Department, especially in light of the poor management of the so-called reconfiguration. I say that because the necessary and promised resources and funding was not delivered. Ratifying the optional protocol of the UNCRPD, which should have and could have been done on the same day as the already delayed ratification of the UNCRPD way back in 2018. No excuses, no delays. The point that I fear that is being lost on government is the absolute importance and necessity for the public to be able to trust the government, trust the politicians and, by extension, trust government agencies. It is imperative to ensure social cohesion. It was interesting to hear that there is a level of trust in the coalition. Well, that has not translated to the general population. Will a new Taoiseach, with time constraints and with a job of work to do in rebuilding their own party, prioritise the best interests of the public and prioritise integrity in politics?
Sin deire leis an díospóireacht caiimé níos an ceist a chur agus sí an ceist ná go nánam nóig Dáil éireann an teachta Simón ó Harcaí chun na cheapa ag an Uachtarán ar Taoiseach. The teachtaí atá héamh na tairgeanna sin Aberdís tá. Aine atá na coine Aberdís níl, is dóilm go an ceist tréite vótáil. Will members please take their designated seats? Designated seats, please. Nomination of Taoiseach. The question is that Dáil Éireann nominates Deputy Simon Harris for appointment by the President to be Taoiseach, and on that question a division has been challenged. Tellers Tá, Deputy Hildegard Naughton and Deputy Cormac Devlin, Neil, Deputy Pádraig McLaughlin and Deputy Matty McGrath.
Deputy James Brown. Deputy Mary Butler. Deputy Thomas Byrne. Deputy Jackie Cahill. Deputy Dara Calleary. Deputy Jack Chambers. Deputy Niall Collins. Deputy Barry Cowan. Deputy Cathal Crowe. Deputy Cormac Devlin. Deputy Stephen Donnelly. Deputy Joe Flaherty. Deputy Sean Fleming. Deputy Norma Foley. Deputy Sean Haughey. Deputy John Lahart. Deputy James Lawless. Deputy Micheál Martin. Deputy Paul McAuliffe. Deputy Charlie McConalogue. Deputy Michael McGrath. Deputy John McGuinness. Deputy Andreas Moynihan. Deputy Michael Moynihan. Deputy Jennifer Monahan O'Connor. Deputy Eamon O'Keefe. Deputy Dara O'Brien. Deputy Jim O'Callaghan. Deputy James O'Connor. Deputy Willie O'Dea. Deputy Christopher O'Sullivan. Deputy Pádraig O'Sullivan. Deputy Anne Rabbitt. Deputy Brendan Smith. Deputy Niamh Smith. Deputy Robert Troy. Deputy Colin Brophy. Deputy Richard Bruton. Deputy Colin Burke. Deputy Peter Burke. Deputy Kieran Cannon. Deputy Joe Carey. Deputy Jennifer Carroll McNeil. Deputy Simon Coveney. Deputy Michael Creed. Deputy Alan Dillon. Deputy Pascal Donoghue. Deputy Bernard Durkin. Deputy Damien English. Deputy Alan Farrell. Deputy Frankie Feehan. Deputy Charles Flanagan. Deputy Brendan Griffin. Deputy Simon Harris. Deputy Martin Hayden. Deputy Emer Higgins. Deputy Heather Humphreys. Deputy Paul Keogh. Deputy Josepha Madigan. Deputy Helen McEntee. Deputy Joe McHugh. Deputy Hildegard Naughton. Deputy Kieran O'Donnell. Deputy Patrick O'Donovan. Deputy Fergus O'Dowd. Deputy John Paul Phelan. Deputy Neil Richmond. Deputy Michael Ring. Deputy David Stanton. Deputy Leo Varadkar. Deputy Patrick Costello. Deputy Francis Noel Duffy. Deputy Nessa Hurrigan. Deputy Brian Ledden. Deputy Catherine Martin. Deputy Stephen Matthews. Deputy Malcolm Noonan. Deputy Marco Kohasik. Deputy Joe O'Brien. Deputy Roderick O'Gorman. Deputy Eamon Ryan. Deputy Oisin Smith. Deputy Chris Andrews. Deputy John Brady. Deputy Martin Brown. Deputy Pat Buckley. Deputy Matt Carthy. Deputy Circa Clark. Deputy Rose Conway-Walsh. Deputy Rada Cronin. Deputy Sean Crowe. Deputy David Cullinan. Deputy Pa Daly. Deputy Pearse Doherty. Deputy Paul Donnelly. Deputy Desi Ellis. Deputy Mairead Farrell. Deputy Kathleen Funchion. Deputy Thomas Gold. Deputy Johnny Quirk. Deputy Martin Kenny. Deputy Claire Curran. Deputy Pádraig McLaughlin. Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald. Deputy Denise Mitchell. Deputy Imelda Munster. Deputy Johnny Mythen. Deputy Owen O'Brien. Deputy Donnacha O'Leary. Deputy Rory O'Murcu. Deputy Angus O'Snuddig. Deputy Louise O'Reilly. Deputy Darren O'Rourke. Deputy Maurice Quinlivan. Deputy Patricia Ryan. Deputy Brian Stanley. Deputy Pauline Tully. Deputy Mark Ward. Deputy Vala Bacik. Deputy Brendan Howland. Deputy Alan Kelly. Deputy Jed Nash. Deputy Aon O'Riordan. Deputy Sean Sherlock. Deputy Duncan Smith. Deputy Holly Kearns. Deputy Gary Gannon. Deputy Catherine Murphy. Deputy Keane O'Callaghan. Deputy Roisin Shortall. Deputy Jennifer Whitmore. Deputy Mick Barry. Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett. Deputy Gino Kenny. Deputy Paul Murphy. Deputy Breed Smith. Deputy Carl Berry. Deputy Sean Canny. Deputy Peter Fitzpatrick. Deputy Noel Grealish. Deputy Michael Lowry. Deputy Verona Murphy. Deputy Dennis Naughton. Deputy Matt Shanahan. Deputy Peadar Tobin. Deputy Michael Collins. Deputy Danny Healy-Ray. Deputy Michael Healy-Ray. Deputy Matty McGrath. Deputy Carol Nolan. Deputy Richard O'Donoghue. Deputy Joan Collins. Deputy Catherine Connolly. Deputy Michael Fitzmaurice. Deputy Marion Harkin. Deputy Michael McNamara. Deputy Thomas Pringle. Deputy Mark McSherry. Deputy Violet Ann Wynne.
Nish, current vote Shin that Dáil Éireann nominates Deputy Simon Harris for appointment by the President to be Taoiseach. Result, Tá 88, Neil 69. I confirm, therefore, Daravíon mar sin Gwilyn Chachta Simon Harris Roundaha from the Chiapaha Eganulchtaran mar Taoiseach. I just want to formally welcome the members of the Harris family to the Distinguished Visitors Gallery. You're all very welcome. Believe that this will be a memory that will be firmly ensconced in the memories of Killian and Saoirse. Long may you remember this great achievement on the part of your dad. Now, Taoiseach Collect, do you think you might be able to say a few words to us?
Gur mágat cean córa gur mágwibh as octver cuid voti, buchas le Peter agus Heather, don Fúcail Kinolcha. And I do accept this nomination to serve as Taoiseach, and I commit to doing everything that I can to honour the trust that you have placed in me today. I want to begin by thanking my own party, Fine Gael, and also our partners in government, Fianna Fáil and the Green Party, for their votes, and also for the independent TDs who supported my nomination here today. This is very much a partnership government, and I intend to lead it in the spirit of unity, collaboration and mutual respect. Today I want to pay tribute to our outgoing Taoiseach, to my colleague, to my friend, Deputy Leo Varadkar. The history books will absolutely record the incredible service that he did for our country in dealing with some of the biggest challenges of our time, most notably Brexit and the COVID-19 pandemic. But history will also record that he was a trailblazer as we broke free from some of the worst prejudices of our past and showing Ireland at its best to the world. Gur mágat Leo. I also want to pay tribute to my friend and colleague Simon Coveney, who's stepping down as a minister after serving our country with distinction in so many different roles over so many different years. In particular, I think any objective analysis will never forget all that he did for our country during the darkest days of Brexit. And today we acknowledge that. We thank you for your contribution to Ireland, and I know it's a contribution you will continue. Today is indeed a very special day for me. When I started campaigning on issues close to my heart and got involved in politics, I chose this life. But my family did not. They've been very patient today. But through every step of the journey, they have supported me without question. I want to particularly thank my parents, Mary and Bart, who are here today. They have been my driving force, often making many personal sacrifices for their three children. I hope they can be proud today of their eldest son, because I absolutely know I would not be standing here were it not for them. I want to thank my sister Gemma and my brother Adam. They are my best friends, and we are each other's biggest supporters. And I also want to thank my Nana, who is here with us today. My biggest thank you. My biggest thank you goes to my wife Kiva, who is my rock and an incredible mother to our two beautiful children. And lastly, to my children Saoirse and Killian, who mean the absolute world to me. I promise being your dad will remain my most important job. It is. It is 13 years since I made my maiden speech in this chamber to nominate Enda Kenny as Taoiseach, someone who went on to fulfil the considerable faith that so many of us had in him, as he led a government that helped to rescue our economy and restored our economic sovereignty. Back then I reflected on what values I thought were needed for the job in hand: integrity, honesty and a work rate which cannot be surpassed. As Taoiseach, I will demand of myself what I saw as so important then, and to return to the words I spoke that day, I promise to preside over a government committed to public service at a time when such commitment is so urgently required. I believed then that a Taoiseach should work every day to realise the hopes, dreams and aspirations of all our people, and I still do. So today, Ceann Comhairle, I accept this new role in a spirit of humility, ready for the challenge and full of energy and determination about what can be achieved. As Taoiseach, I want to bring new ideas, a new energy, and I hope a new empathy to public life. But politics is never about the office holder. This is not about me. It is about all of us, working together to serve the people. We as a people, we as a country, have over the last 100 years worked tirelessly together to create our own future. Collectively, this country can and should be proud of the progress that it has made. The number of people with a job is higher than ever before. The number of people accessing education is amongst the highest in the European Union. But now is an opportune moment to build a new social contract, one which renews our promise as a republic, to create equality of opportunity, to support those who need the state the most, to protect our hard-earned economic success, to use its benefits to deliver tangible outcomes to society. Time is certainly short, and there's lots to do. Housing remains the greatest societal and economic challenge of our generation. Today, I recommit to moving mountains to help build more homes and drive more home ownership. I will work tirelessly to support the delivery of sláinte care, and will prioritise the delivery of mental health services, and in a step change in how we care for our older people. And I mean this seriously. I want to work with colleagues across this House to deliver real and meaningful reform for people with disabilities. As Taoiseach, I want to see everyone reach their full potential. I want to help create an Ireland that drives innovation and creativity, an Ireland that is compassionate, tolerant and respectful, a country that gives every child an equal start in life, an Ireland that protects our children's future by acting decisively on the climate crisis, an Ireland that values community and rural and regional development. This is a time of great challenge. It's a time in the world where leadership matters. In Ukraine, we see brave and courageous people standing firm against unprovoked war and aggression. In Gaza, we are witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe, and we are seeing innocent children, women and men being starved and slaughtered. We have not been silent on the unforgivable terrorist actions of Hamas on October the 7th, nor can we be silent on the disproportionate reaction of the Israeli government. And as a country, we will play our part in helping bring about ceasefire and a lasting peace. Later this week, I will travel to Brussels and deliver those messages to Europe on behalf of the Irish people. Ireland's position in Europe is vital to our economic and social success. It has in many ways now become a part of our national identity. Yesterday, I was honoured to join with government colleagues in meeting with the First and Deputy First Ministers of Northern Ireland at the North-South Ministerial Council. And as Taoiseach, I pledge to guard and honour my role as protector and guarantor of the Good Friday Agreement. We have so much more to achieve for all communities on this island, and I look forward to working very much with the Northern Ireland Executive, because Ireland must never take peace or freedom for granted. Our political history has been defined by our quest for freedom. Freedom of country, freedom of conscience, the freedom to achieve freedom. Today, in the 21st century, our destiny is to build on these achievements, to provide hope, to provide opportunity, to provide a better future for all. This must be our mission, our pledge to the generations to come. Whilst I am proudly the leader of Fine Gael, I will lead a coalition of 3 parties. And today, I sincerely promise to be a Taoiseach for all. No matter your political persuasion, I will work with you and for the country that I know we all love. I will be a Taoiseach who will listen, and my message is simple. I want to work every day to improve the lives of all in this country. Fuelled by hope and driven by a vision of a better Ireland, I will provide a new leadership and a new energy, and I intend to act decisively in the best interests of our people. Going back centuries, our shared history is more than simply a narrative of oppression and resistance and the courageous triumph over adversity. It is a story about belief in each other, of faith in the future. The Irish story is a story of hope. A spirit of optimism sustained us in the darkest of days. And today, once again, we must ensure it lights our way forward. Let us not make the mistake of giving in to pessimism and despair about our future. History has been written in Dáil Éireann so many times since January 1919. We can and must write it again by rising above partisan politics, by working together to solve the greatest challenges of our time. The people expect us to do more. We should demand of ourselves no less.
Inishtan dollar fionri gudi lahur teresh kuig. Lahur teresh kuig.